Every ship entering the port of Alexandria was essentially inviting information theft. Officials searched the ship's cargo for books first, confiscating every written work they found and taking them to the library to copy them. So why was an empire suffering from such a hunger for books? Why had humanity become obsessed with cramming all the knowledge in the world into a single building? In this episode of Echoes of Lost Worlds, we trace the footsteps of the ancient world's first big data project, namely the Library of Alexandria. It all began when General Ptolemy stole the body of Alexander the Great and brought it to Alexandria. This was not a burial. It was a political statement, a claim to legitimacy for a brand new kingdom. Ptolemy I Soter would bring that same strategic genius to the world of knowledge. Ancient sources tell us he appointed Demetrius of Phalerum as his advisor, and together they conceived something far greater than a palace, a center of thought. But it was his son, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who took that vision and turned it into a fortress of universal knowledge, funded by the royal treasury. When Ptolemy II established the Mausoleum, the Temple of the Muses, he launched a system the world had never seen before. The brightest minds on earth no longer had to worry about survival. They received a state salary, free housing, and had exactly one job to think. This was the ancient world's answer to what we would call a university. And overseeing the organization of this knowledge was Zenodotus, one of the sharpest minds of his era. He was the man who standardized texts and laid the very foundations of librarianship. The library's goal was not simply to spread Greek culture, it was to gather the knowledge of the entire world and place it under one Greek roof. The translation of Jewish scriptures into Greek, the Septuagint, was supported within the library itself. This is perhaps the clearest proof of what scholars call Ptolemy's intellectual imperialism. They were collecting knowledge, translating it, and organizing it by their own world standards. To them, knowledge was not just cultural heritage, it was a tool of governance. The dream of gathering all of humanity's memory into a single place had been achieved. But how do you manage that much knowledge? Who gave the order to seize books from ships, and how exactly did the Pinakes, that massive cataloging system, actually work? Keep tracing history with echoes of lost worlds. But how were these chaotic piles of papyrus organized thousands of years ago with such precision? How did Callimachus, architect of the Pinakes, turn this library into a data center? The library stood in the Brucheion, Alexandria's royal quarter. When the geographer Strabo visited the city, he described it as part of the royal palace complex itself. But this was more than a museum, more than a mausoleum, it was a living laboratory. Meeting halls, dining rooms, open walkways for thought. Scholars didn't enter as isolated monks, they entered as state employees. Ptolemy's salaried staff didn't just read, they conducted the most advanced experiments of their time in everything from astronomy to medicine. This was not a place where knowledge was stored, it was a place where knowledge was created. Dozens of copyists worked in workshops, meticulously reproducing text, rapidly swelling the library's collection to hundreds of thousands of scrolls. But when you have a collection that vast, how do you find what you're looking for? That is where the architect of the system enters, Callimachus. When Callimachus compiled the Pinakes, he changed the history of librarianship forever. He was not the library's director, but he was its brain. Thanks to the Pinakes, for the very first time, which work belonged to which author and which genre it fell into was systematically recorded. This was the first concrete example of what we now call a catalogue, the indexing of knowledge. Thanks to Callimachus, the library was no longer a labyrinth. It was a database with a search engine. Alexandria was the only place on earth where knowledge was physically accessible. When Eratosthenes used the library's data to calculate the circumference of the earth, he wasn't decoding a building, he was decoding the universe. But why did this perfect system vanish over time? In the next episode, we face the true story behind history's greatest destruction of knowledge. History textbooks destroy the library in a single great fire with a single guilty party. From Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BC to the Arab conquest of the 7th century, everyone gets blamed. But modern archaeological evidence tells a different story. The library did not burn in a single night. It died over decades through neglect, through silence, through slow collapse. To save a building from fire, you need water. To keep knowledge alive, you need funding and intention. How did Alexandria lose both? The most famous legend, Caesar burns the ships in the harbor and the fire spreads to the library. But the historical record proves the library continued operating long after that event. It was not an ending, it was an accident. The library did not burn in a single night. It died over decades through neglect, through silence, through slow collapse. The real decline began under Roman rule as financial support slowly eroded, revealing a far deeper structural problem. The real breaking point came in the 3rd century AD. The conquest of Alexandria by the Palmyrene Empire and Emperor Aurelian's brutal reconquest devastated the Buchaean district, the very neighborhood that housed the library. Archaeological excavations show the neighborhood suffered massive destruction in this period and that the library's physical integrity was broken by these conflicts. Without scholar salaries, without state funding, the wheels of the system ground to a halt. Without a guardian, knowledge fades quietly, just like this. When Bishop Theophilus ordered the destruction of the Serapeum in AD 391, it was less a physical demolition than an ideological purge. The last remaining center of intellectual life had been erased. And what about the Arab conquest of the 7th century? The order attributed to Caliph Omar to burn the books, that story only appears in the 13th century. It is political propaganda, not history. The library had already ceased to function centuries earlier, buried in silence under the weight of 1,000 years. Alexandria was not destroyed by war. It was crushed beneath the weight of a changing world order. Alexandria was not a building, it was an idea. It was humanity's desire to understand the universe and carry what it knew into the future. The fall of Alexandria showed us how fragile it is to concentrate all knowledge in a single place. The knowledge we hold today stretches far beyond the limited shelves of the ancient world. Yet the challenges of that age and the challenges of our digital era are strikingly similar. Not just collecting knowledge, but filtering it and passing it on to generations yet to come. Humanity now lives in an age of decentralized knowledge, but you are the guardians of this legacy. If there is one lesson Alexandria teaches us, it is this: history does not repeat itself, not for those who record it, but for those who remember it. Until we meet again in the dusty pages of history.